I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
Oh, look, we've heard enough of that this week. Come on.
That's a nightmare. Turn it off.
The last 2 weeks.
Yeah, we have been getting a lot of rain. So what we're going to talk about today is so appropriate, the weather.
Rain is very important to the gamekeepers and, of course, to all the ag people out there, for sure.
But at some point, you got to have some sunshine.
Yeah.
Toxie, it is. We're wet.
Yeah, my first thought when we have a weather expert on is like, make it stop.
Yeah, can he do that?
Can you please?
How
make it
good
stop?
are you? That's right.
And it's not funny we're working on our places, and that's some bad. But the people making a living,
but the people, row croppers, it's rough here.
It's too much. It's just too much.
Yeah, I've got a gauge right inside my gate at my new little happy place, and I think our average in this area is supposed to be around 55 inches a year. I have added up 41 inches since New Year's Day already.
And
I bet it's been higher.
We've been
South and east of you's probably been higher, and north of you's been higher.
Yeah, we've been a lot of those. I call them red rains.
Yeah. Let me get our guest introduced.
Oh, yeah,
So,
sorry.
So look, we've got this great relationship with Nutrien.
Yeah.
We've met some great folks there. Jeff Tarsi, from all the way, just we've met
even to
so
the
many
local
great
store
folks.
level, too.
Brian, Frank, all these great guys. But they keep so I got signed up early on. Actually, I think you might have as well. There's a guy there, and there he is on the screen, Eric Snodgrass. He is the wizard of weather.
The wizard of weather.
And he helps them all over the world to give insight into what the weather's going to be that week. He is incredible. The wizard of weather, Eric Snodgrass. We are so happy to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
I just have to say it's just one more data point or proof point of how smart Nutrien is as a group, as a company. And not just to brag on them because they're part of what we got going on, but to think about it because weather in everything we do, especially as a gamekeeper, but the rest of the life for everybody, weather trumps everything. I mean, like, as minuscule as it really is important to the rest of the world, but everybody's obsessed with deer movement. And you can talk about 10 ways from Sunday, and everybody agrees. Weather trumps everything. Growing crops, trying to manage wildlife, your daily life, weather trumps everything.
Yes,
so
it
how
does.
smart is it for them to be able to add that resource? I just thought, wow, just to acknowledge how important it is to everybody out there.
Yeah. Eric, tell us a little bit about you. How did you become the fellow at Nutrien?
I ask myself that question all the time. I was talking to my daughter last night. She just got her ACT score from high school, and I look at her score, and it was like 10 points higher than mine. And I told him, listen, honey, I know you think I'm a smart guy, but I just want to let you know I did graduate in the top 80% of my class. And she's like, wow, that's amazing. I'm like, no. Think about that stat. So what's funny is I wasn't the brightest kid out there in terms of studying, but at some point, I don't know, maybe when I was in my late teens, I became fascinated with severe weather and decided to pick it as a college major. And when I got into college, man, I fell in love with it. It was fun. I'm one of those weirdos that chose the major and never switched from it. And I got so into it that was funny. When I was a junior in college, I'm up north on a fishing trip with some friends. And I asked this good friend of mine, I was like, man, what should I do next? He's like, go to grad school, go get a master's degree, keep going. And I'm like, I don't want to go to school any longer. He's like, no, do this. I promise you'll be a smart move. And so I did. I listened to his advice. We were pulling in northern one after another in the north woods of Wisconsin. And he said, go to school. So I went to my master's degree at University of Illinois, started my PhD work, and decided along the way that my PhD work was kind of valuable. So I ended up starting a company where I was doing long range seasonal forecasting for reinsurance companies. All the while I was a professor of atmospheric sciences at the University of Illinois up here in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois. And lo and behold, Nutrien comes along and likes what I'm doing, and they decide to buy the company from me. And they said, hey, you ready to come work for us? And I was about 13 years being a professor and loving it. Taught about 25,000 kids while I was at University of Illinois, and I made this jump to Nutrien, and it has been phenomenal. It's phenomenal because of guys like Tarsi. You keep bringing him up. He's an outstanding leader, and he's easy to follow, and it's been fun to work for them and try to keep them ahead of their weather stresses. So I don't know. I think it's this, all right? Every day, and you mentioned this a minute ago, you wake up to a new problem. So like there's something new to solve tomorrow. You don't get bored doing what I'm doing. And so you can take a kid who's not the brightest in high school and turn him into someone who finds a lifelong passion of studying Mother Nature and all of her mysteries. And so that's how I landed here.
That's interesting. You say
Studying
that
Mother
about,
Nature. That is
about
cool.
how every day is different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a fingerprint. It probably. I mean, there never is going to be the same day.
It's always a
I'll go
moving target.
I'll go one better. This time of year, every hour can start to be different because it just what we were talking about before we kind of whatever went on air is this time of year how even the most sophisticated, AI-based computer forecasting can be wrong, just a few hours away in the summertime. It's amazing.
Summertime is our worst time. That's when we're least accurate because it's all driven by thunderstorms, right? Those are hyper local, convective events. They pop all of a sudden. I mean, yesterday right here in my house I'm living in a little town called Mahomet. We had 1.5 inches of rain. You drive 10 miles north of us, nothing. And that's how hyper local that weather is. So I tell everybody, my life is an exercise in trying to predict the future behavior of a nonlinear chaotic fluid. And people go like, what? And I said, you're trying to predict something that's not predictable. So that's it. So we get a lot of grief. You all know the best jokes ever. You get to keep your job even though you're wrong half the time. I'm like, well, shoot, you tried doing this and see how well you do.
50-50 is pretty good.
Well, we've all got smartphones. We all have apps on our phones. Prior to this, you mentioned that it's the most visited app on everybody's phone.
Doubt about it.
But if you have 3 different apps right now and you check them all in the summer, typically they're all different. If you just everybody's macro look at that's 70% chance today, 30%. But you check this time of year, and they will differ.
Well, I mean, this comes to your point here, right? You talk about these weather apps, and if you think about it, I'm going to tell you something you guys might not know about with these weather apps. When you get one, if you pay for it versus one that uses advertising dollars, you're going to get something entirely different. We have found, there was a study done about a decade ago, that when you compared the weather forecast given to you by the apps that you get, that you just download for free and use, where everything is paid through advertising dollars. Listen to what we found. They were increasing precipitation totals. They were increasing precipitation chances because they found that people would look at the app more often if you said it was going to rain more often. And because their revenue is based on advertising, boy, they did it all the time. So they would just artificially inflate them enough to get your eyeballs on it more. So it's tricky business weather.
Yeah.
I've noticed that with my precipitation app that I have. Every time I go measure my rain gauge, on average it is higher on the Precip app, where I've zoomed in as tight as I possibly can.
Right.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, Dudley. Is your rain gauge under a tree? Because if it is, you're not going to get the right rain.
It is.
It's under his barn.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, no joke. I had a guy, this is about 6-7 years ago. I had a guy that called and texted and emailed and yelled at me day in and day out about how terrible his, app was that we had built him on getting his rainfall right. And I said, all right, man, I just don't understand. He's out in Lincoln, Nebraska. I was like, I don't understand what's going on. I said, tell me about your gauge. Tell me where you put your gauge. And he's like, well, I bought my gauge at Walmart. I said, that's fine. You can get a good rain gauge at Walmart. And he said, and it's my barn gauge. And I go, what? He goes, it's my barn gauge. And I said, what does that mean? He goes, well, gets real smart aleck with me. He goes, you know how your gauge has 2 holes where you can screw it into something? I said, yeah. He goes, I screwed mine into the side of the barn. And I said, and we always underestimate your precip. In other words, you always measure more than we say. He's like, yeah, every time. And I said, listen, the barn is collecting all of your rain and it's running down the siding into your gauge, man. That's your problem, not my problem. Dude hung up the phone, never heard from him again. I didn't get an apology out of him, but you believe me, some people
He was
They've got some wacky ideas.
he was so embarrassed.
Yeah.
He never called back.
I will say I have 2 apps that I pay, that are paid apps. One of them is OnX, and the second one is a weather app. So I'm glad I've been actually paying for it.
Well, let me ask you, while you mentioned chance of rain, can you explain that to me? Because I just recently learned that it means something that, like if it says a 65% chance of rain.
Yeah, I've got that written down too.
Can you explain what that means?
Sure. So the National Weather Service is the one that came up with the original definition of a percent chance of rain. Now, it's not a straight probability like you'd think when you use the National Weather Service, okay? So if they said there's a 60% chance of rain, they're actually multiplying the rainfall times the area coverage times their own confidence. So there's actually a human element in that. Now, they use that for years and years and years. So there's actually some of that, again, it's just their confidence in their own forecasting. Now, another more, I think, reasonable way by which we're doing it modern days is that because of increase in computing power, we can actually run our forecast models, all of them, multiple times over and over and over again, both with time and introducing error to see if the model is accurate. We call it ensemble forecasting. Then what you can do is you can take all 100, 200, 300 runs, and however many of them say that there's going to be a rain at a given time, well, that's your probability. So we really do it 2 different ways. But if you're using the National Weather Service, they still do an area coverage times confidence by the forecaster that's producing that forecast. And that's what you get. Now, you want to know the biggest problem with all of this? This is the worst part. What I have learned is that people take probabilistic forecasts and make them deterministic. Now, what do I mean by that? If I told you there's a 65% chance of rain, your brain says it's going to rain. If I tell you that there's a 35% chance of rain, you're saying it's not going to rain, right? Our brains try to switch probabilities into certainties, and it's something that's really tricky to do, and it's hard to do. So you can actually tell a guy, hey, there's a 90% chance of rain today, and if it doesn't rain, that meteorologist is technically not wrong.
Well, it's interesting. I've always thought about it a little differently, and obviously I'm wrong, which is not uncommon. But when it say the local guy says there's a 65% chance of rain, I'm assuming that 65% of that area in the forecast range will get rain, and 35% of it won't. I guess that's completely wrong.
Yeah, there's a confidence aspect to that as well. But
So
it's tricky.
the confidence, is that like a 1 through 10, or does the meteorologist say I'm a 75% chance, or is there a scale, or how does that work?
Well, then they
I
throw
don't
in
know.
how many inches.
Yeah, I mean-
30% of 2/10.
'Cause
Yeah.
if you had a really confident meteorologist, he's liable to weight himself a little more.
Is there a lot of competition between you guys?
Yeah.
I mean, do you
Oh, yeah.
watch and like if Jim
Are y'all
Cantori,
ranked on accuracy? Yeah.
if he says something then it doesn't rain? Are you like ha ha?
You
ha,
text and be like, "Way to go, Jim."
No, we catch enough grief from the general public that we don't have to tear each other down all the time. But
pretty good.
we do watch each other and just kind of in the back of our heads or with our closest friends talk about failures and successes. That's for sure.
So, guys, we all have a bunch of questions. Why don't we let Dudley start with the rapid fires first? And rapid fires brought to you by Lanny.
Nutrient Ag
Here we
Services.
go.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Our people.
Solutions.
All right,
Excuse me.
buckle up, Eric.
All right.
All right, Eric, I'm going to ask you these real quick. Try to get me a quick answer back.
You got it.
We want to get to know you better. All right, are you ready?
Yep.
I know you deal with a lot of weather related to growing corn, but what is your favorite preparation of corn as far as eating?
On the cob, lathered in butter.
All
right.
right. What is your favorite summer vegetable?
Ooh, tomatoes.
All right.
Oh, wait, tomatoes are fruit. Shoot. Well, I'm going to include them as a vegetable today.
That completely
call that
counts,
a
don't
vegetable
worry.
in the South. Have you ever met Jim Cantori?
I have twice. Good guy.
All right.
Oh, wow.
Have you ever eaten a boiled peanut?
Only once in Georgia.
We're going to send you some
All right.
from
All
our
right.
buddies at the Peanut Patch.
Have you ever been tasked with calling a game or event off due to the weather?
Yes, multiple times, and it is not fun.
I bet.
People do not like it when you're wrong.
All right. Ford, Chevy, Mopar, or other?
Oh, mercy. You guys aren't going to like me. I drive an Audi. But I have a
you're a
Ram
Euro.
1500 truck I do enjoy.
All right.
You're a Euro guy. All right.
Well, kind of.
He said he had a Ram. Yeah.
Yeah. Songs. Pick your favorite song. Mr. Weatherman, Hank Williams Jr. No Rain, Blind Melon.
Oh.
Here Comes the Sun, The Beatles, or Purple Rain, Prince.
Oh, mercy. I'm going to have to go with the Beatles only because that is their most famous song.
There you
All
go.
right.
Name 2 of the most exciting, challenging months to be a meteorologist.
May is the first one. And the second one would be December because everybody wants me to tell them it's going to be a white Christmas. And we have no idea.
All right. Good one. And last but not least, have you ever seen or recorded a UFO on radar, sonar, whatever?
I have not. Hopefully that means I can leave my tinfoil hat over there and keep talking to you guys.
That was a great question, Dudley.
All right. Well, good stuff.
Great question.
I do feel like I know you better now.
I do too.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, look, when we started preparing for this, we knew we were going to ask you the tough questions. So I'm going to throw out
Tough
the first.
questions.
Yeah, the tough questions. I want to throw out the first one. Why do they call it raining cats and dogs?
Oh.
I remember once looking this up, but I cannot remember why. And I am really tempted to go over to this screen over here and Google it real fast so that I sound
Knock it
intelligent,
out.
but I don't know the answer.
That would have been a
Do
good
you know?
trivia.
Well,
Of course, Bob.
I've always heard that back in the old days when they had thatch huts over in Europe, that the cats and dogs would get in the roofs, and if it rained a whole lot, they'd fall out, and they would say it's raining cats and dogs. And that's
There you
what
go.
I'd heard.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
We'll ask Cantori that.
When we had him on. Yeah.
Bobby can come up with some humdingers.
All right, so let's go down to the end of the table. Let's start, Laney or Toxie. Y'all got a question?
I do. First of all, do you have a storm chaser truck?
I used to. So there was a while there before I started having kids that I didn't have a storm chaser truck, but I don't know if you know this. I'm a huge car guy. I absolutely love them. I think I've owned over 40. Well, I convinced my wife when I was young to let me buy a specific storm chasing car. So here's what you need. You need all-wheel drive, and you need to not care if it gets hit by hail. So I bought a 1991 Plymouth Laser. Now, I don't know if you remember these things. These were the Mitsubishi Eclipse,
Yes.
the Eagle
Okay.
Talon.
Yeah.
Now, why did I buy it? It's 2-liter turbo,
Yeah.
all-wheel drive, 5-speed, and I did not care if it got pummeled by hail. It was fast. I put my own boost controller on it. That little car could absolutely scoot. And again, if it got rolled, if it got hurt, I didn't care. I'll just go get another. I paid like $900 for that thing, drove it for 3 years, chasing storms, had an absolute blast.
Cool. And you mentioned the next thing was I was going to ask about
Man after my own heart, right there.
Yeah, I mean it. I was going to ask about hail. It's one of the most amusing or amazing things.
Yeah, not amusing.
But it's just, being here in Mississippi in the summer, in the heat, and it raining ice. Can you help me understand how that phenomenon works?
Yeah, you bet. So you basically got really strong updrafts. Okay, so this is air going up in the atmosphere. No joke. Sometimes the updraft in a storm could be 100 miles an hour. You ever notice when you fly that those pilots will never take you through those thick cumulus? They always go around those things because if you went inside of one, everybody in that plane would be barfing their guts out. All right. Inside of that storm, if you look at the whole thing top to bottom, the top 2/3 is a mixture between ice particles, and what we call supercooled water. That's liquid water that's not frozen, but it's got a temperature below freezing. When those two things meet, the supercooled water will instantly freeze on an ice particle, like a snowflake, and just starts to grow via the accretion process. But you have such a strong updraft that ice just keeps bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's just supported inside the storm. And the whole time it's up there, it just keeps accreting water on its bottom side. Now you sit here, watch this. I'm going to show you something cool. I have in my office, I want you to see this thing. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
That's a replica of a hailstone that fell in Coffeyville, Kansas, 1970. It's a famous one. You see all these spikes on top? Can you see that okay? This hailstone was oriented like this in the thunderstorm's updraft. So the bottom is smooth because as it's just hovering there, little tiny water droplets are hitting the bottom and freezing as they get pulled up because the wind is going up against this. So they freeze in these little fingers like you see on top here. The biggest one of these ever, this is not even close. The biggest one ever was 19 inches in circumference, about that big. It fell in Vivian, South Dakota in 2010. And if you don't know where that is, it's near Pierre. Get on I-90 heading across South Dakota. And I'm not joking. You can go there and buy a T-shirt at the truck stop that will give you a shirt. The shirt says "Getting Stoned in Vivian," and you can have a big, it's got like a mask of this on the front of that shirt. But yeah, hail's fascinating and terrifying. It's one of my top 3 things I hate the most about forecasting is hail. Love it, hate it.
Wow, it's amazing.
I will be ordering that shirt.
Yeah, you need one of those shirts
before everybody listens to
it.
That's incredible. One of the and it's kind of along the same lines of one of the questions I had is we all know water's heavy. It's like 8 pounds a gallon.
Yeah.
And when we talk about one of these thunderstorms that's got so much precipitation, there's just got to be tons upon tons of water up in that cloud. I don't understand how it holds it up in the air.
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's not just tons upon tons, it's hundreds of millions of tons in these big storms. So this is an amazing thing about the atmosphere. When you see a storm, and let's just say there's a big storm here and the ground's down there, and you go underneath it, did you know that the atmosphere is actually lower pressure under a big chunk of that storm than anywhere around it? And that's because what's keeping that storm supported in the atmosphere is the fact that it's warmer. This is kind of odd to think about, but it's warmer than its surrounding environment. Now, you all know hot air rises, right? So the hot air that's in that storm is so much warmer than its surrounding environment, it just stays buoyant. And it's suspending all of that water until those droplets grow big enough that they fall out and eventually by gravity just hit the ground in form of a downdraft. So I'm not joking you when I tell you that there's that much weight in that whole storm, but it is buoyant because it's warmer than its surrounding environment. By the way, the environment around those storms, like in the upper atmosphere, is like minus 60, 70, 80, 90 degrees. It's very, very cold in the upper atmosphere. So it just floats.
That is amazing. Yeah. Gravity is an overlooked.
Oh, really?
It's pretty serious.
We take it for granted.
It's sure. I didn't realize now that I've lived a pretty full life. It actually increases. It's not the same. The older I get, it's the more gravity I feel. Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
I like to hunt. I think we all like to hunt. And my question
love to hunt.
My question pertains to, well, I've got a couple, but I'll start with this one. All of these wives' tales that we hear, or things that you learn in the almanac or read in the almanac, are there any of those that actually, I don't necessarily say ring true, but are right most of the times?
Yeah, so most of them are based in some sort of scientific theory, right? So you'll hear one like, oh, if it rains on Easter Sunday, you're going to get rain for the next 7 Sundays after that, right? Well, here's the reality. If it's storming in spring and you're getting rain pretty regular, well, shoot, the cadence of weather systems is about 1 a week. So it just tends to line up that way. Or my favorite is like a fog in February means a rain in April. Well, that one's self-fulfilling, right? I mean, you'll get fogs in February every time it warms up. And so what ends up happening is 90 days later, when you're in, later on in April and May, guess what? That's your wet season. It's going to rain during that time as well. Now the groundhog, that's just a gimmick. That's just for the fun of it. That thing has no predictive skill. In fact, I think NOAA did a study that over the last 135 years, they've been doing it. I think he's right less than 40% of the time. So just ignore that. Well, I'll tell you what Groundhog's Day is. It's a reason for Pennsylvanians to drink before dawn, right? So it's just go out and have a good time. They rip that yolk out of the cage.
There we go.
But there's all sorts of good ones.
I always heard if you kill a snake and you hang him up over
it's going to rain.
It's
Bobby
going to rain
loves
in
this
a week.
kind of
Yeah.
What about red skies at night, sailor's delight?
Red sky morning, sailors take warning.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the sailor part is what's critical to that, okay?
Okay.
So when you're thinking about this, where did that phrase come from? Mostly that phrase came from maritime shipping lanes that use what are called the trade winds. So those run from east to west closer to the equator. In fact, one of the big reasons we're all here in the United States, just looking at you four white guys, and I'm a white guy, we mostly have our heritage in Europe. We got here through trade over 4 centuries, using these trade winds to get over to the quote unquote new world. All right. What happens is if you, some of your best sunsets, right, they reflect off a low cloud layer. So if you're looking at the sunset at night and you're in the trade winds, you're looking west, correct? So what ends up happening here is you're seeing clouds that are off in the direction you're going. So they're reflecting the night before. So then what happens is that you know that you're going toward a system. So excuse me, that's the morning, the red in the morning. So at night they're behind you. So it's an old maritime saying, and it basically just tells you where the clouds are with respect to the time of day, and if you see them or don't see them reflecting off the bottom. But I'll tell you something else about that phrase. This is something else. When we have the most brilliant sunsets in the whole midsection of the country, you and me both included, we're often in a situation where we're going to be having an abundant amount of rain. You're going, what are you talking about? Now, this is what I'm talking about. It's middle of summer. You're getting real red sunsets. You know what that means? Those sunsets are red because in the upper atmosphere, there's smoke. It's probably coming from Canada like it did earlier this year, or later in summer, it's coming from the Western United States. And every time we have major fires in Canada or in the Western US, the Mississippi Basin is typically having a whole lot of thunderstorms. So earlier this spring, you talked before we got on air today about how wet it's been. And I pulled up the data for Starkville. You're at 127% of average, 35 inches rain, right? We're in Starkville, okay? So far in the year. So you only got 20 left to go, and we're not even halfway through the year yet. And why? Well, we had all spring long huge Canadian wildfires. Do you remember those? You see those in the news? Just pouring smoke over the top of us. So there's all sorts of things you can be doing with the coloring of the sky to kind of give you an indication of what the weather's up to. That's a great question.
Fun
Good
stuff.
stuff. Yeah. Makes sense.
So as a meteorologist, I'm trying to wrap my mind around like what you do every day. You've got this phenomenal email that goes out, and I want to, and we'll put it in the show link so guys can subscribe to it. It's so much information. You're looking all over the world, but so I guess my question is, if you're trying to help farmers in the bread basket of the country, and are you looking at what's going on in Hawaii or that part of the world 7 days? Is that our weather coming this way?
It is. It's all one big, massive, circumglobal thing, right? So let me tell you this. This is kind of fun. What makes the United States the breadbasket of the world? Now, there are other breadbaskets, but I'm going to be honest with you. If when God created the United States, he looked down and said, right there, I'm going to make a lot of food. And the reason that what happened there geographically was simply this. There are only 2 places globally where our major mountain chains run north and south. It's the Rocky Mountains and the Andes, so North and South America, okay? You go anywhere else around the planet, most of the mountain chains run west to east. So what happens is this. The biggest set of mountains we've got are called the Himalayas. And when the flow of the atmosphere goes over the top of those Himalayas, they stick up all the way into the jet stream and they start to disturb it. So they get little wiggles in the flow that goes out over the Pacific Ocean. Well, guess what the Pacific Ocean is? Just a massive body of water that is ready to pump moisture and heat and therefore momentum into the atmosphere. So it comes snaking across the open Pacific, which I'm watching. And then it gets to those Rocky Mountains. And guess what those Rocky Mountains do? They stick up real high too. So the air hits them. It's forced to reposition itself, and it spins up brand new low pressure systems in the plains. And guess where they go straight toward? The Mid-South. And as they go, guess what they have access to? Gulf of Mexico moisture, or Gulf of America. I'm still not sure what I'm supposed to call it, but the Gulf. They get moisture out of the Gulf, right? And that moisture comes screaming up from the south. And guess what? From you guys to me and everywhere else south of us, there's no mountains to intercept that moisture. So what do? It gets here, explodes into thunderstorms. And then that storm system just goes off the East Coast and dies in the North Atlantic, and it just eventually gets all the way to England as an old decaying dead weather system. So you say, Eric, how's that all connected? When I want to tell you what your weather is going to be 10 to 15 days from now, it's right now brewing in India and China and Asia. So I got to look over there first at the birthplace of weather in the northern hemisphere, and see how it gets over to us later. And that's it. Every day of my life, I don't look at you guys first. You kidding me? I got to start halfway around the world to know what I'm going to tell you all next.
How about that?
That's pretty neat. So that, I mean, makes
total sense.
Yeah,
though.
it does.
Yeah.
So, we've always heard of El Nino and La Nina.
Sure.
Are those the winds that you're speaking of?
Yeah, well, those are trade winds, right? So we live in the westerlies. Our weather comes out of the west. But you ever been to southern Florida, all their weather comes out of the east.
Mm-hmm.
You go a little farther south of that, it's even more out of the east. Go over to the Pacific, the largest open fetch of water on Earth from west to east, and there's just this region from like South America to Indonesia where normally the trade winds are just blowing out of the east. Well, years where they get going real fast, a bunch of cold water shows up along the equator. We call that La Nina. When those winds slow down, all that warm water comes sloshing back. We call that El Nino. And you're saying, well, what does it matter? You're redistributing across, 8,000 miles of open ocean, the temperature pattern. So guess what it does? It changes the way by which the heat and momentum gets into our weather belt, which is called the westerlies, and affects our weather downstream. So generally speaking, we got to keep an eye on those ocean temperatures. And in case you didn't know this, the reason why we call it El Nino came from a bunch of Peruvian fishermen. So Peru, these guys that fish down in Peru, back in the mid 1800s, they started calling this weird oscillation in the ocean temperatures. They started calling it El Nino, and the El Nino, the little boy they were referencing, is Jesus. That's El Nino. If you ever hear it, that's who they're talking about. And they gave it that name because the peak of any El Nino, or the opposite La Nina, happens around Christmas every year. So it's a big time winter phenomenon.
Is it one of the major influences on only our weather or the whole world?
It's whole world. It's a major factor. But as we talked about, the super local effects that you all have are big too. I mean, that river to your west, boy, the Mississippi is the crown jewel of agriculture on this planet, and its basin has a huge impact on the way that local moisture gets absorbed into the atmosphere, or really, evaporated into it. It affects the way that some of the local winds behave. So you have a lot of local effects as well. But I'm going to tell you something. That river basin and all of its tributaries, it is the largest system of flat navigable river space on Earth. Did you know that if you took the rest of the Earth's rivers and found all the spots on it, you can put like a barge, and added all the rest of the world's rivers up, they don't equal the Mississippi, Ohio, and Missouri.
Wow.
That's how important that river system is.
Wow. And I guess
Almighty River.
Think back through time how much more important it was in the development of our country than anything too. So question is, it seems like it's almost like today is like it's all or nothing. Like the last 2 years we've had just the worst I can remember droughts in the fall. Now it's not as bad, probably good for farmers trying to get the crops out and stuff, but starting maybe in August, but in September, then just terrible droughts. And of course, where a lot of our business here is, selling seed for people. And but it seems like it's all or nothing. But even like in the summers, and when you get to the drought, you see weather systems coming and they just kind of dissipate. But then when we've got all this moisture, it seems like there's more for it to tap into when it gets here. Is there something to that? It's just hard to break the cycle when we're so dry because there's no moisture to tap into?
Yeah, I mean, that old phrase that came out of the Dust Bowl, which is drought begets drought, right? All signs fail in times of drought. That's a real thing about the atmosphere. But I'll tell you something. I mean, just speak specifically to Mississippi. We have data, thanks mainly to the military and then the National Weather Service, that goes back to 1895. And if you look over that whole long time stretch, there have been periods where we've had this same kind of thing happening, okay? But if you look at the last 45 years or so, I can tell you two important things. We're wetter on average for the whole year. So overall, total precipitation, we are wetter by a few inches. But it's, to your point, more of our precipitation is coming from bigger one-off events, right? You're getting 3 or 4 inches out of a single system rather than 3 or 4 inches over 15, 20 days. And so what we've also measured is that the frequency, or the number of times per year that you'll get more than 2 inches of rainfall in a 24-hour time period, that's more than doubled in Mississippi. So we're just getting bigger, badder rainfall events, and therefore water management is everything. I mean, for what you guys do, for what I do, I tell every farmer I know that managing their waterways, managing their soil health and water is top. It's got to be top priority for the longevity of that land.
Wow.
Yeah, it does. That's good stuff. So, look, what can you help me understand dew? And when the dew falls, is that nature's way of helping sustain us, or a little crop or a clover field until a rain event comes along? Or
oh yeah, I mean that is Mother Nature's little morning kiss, just to give you exactly what you need. So here it is. There's always moisture in the air. Okay, and in fact, that moisture is in the form of evaporated water. And here's the thing about it: the hotter you make the atmosphere, the more water vapor the atmosphere can sustain. Okay. Now it's vapor. You can't see it. It's not drops. It's not clouds. It's the vapor. Now here's what happens. The moment you drop the temperatures, the amount of water vapor the atmosphere can contain, drops too. There's a point as you drop the temperature that the amount of water vapor that's in it is now too much given its temperature. So what it does is it has to condense some of it out, and it does it on anything that's ready to be condensed upon. Now, if you're talking about a cloud or fog, it's condensing on fine little, impurities in the air, dust or aerosols, soot. I don't care, but that's every time you stick your tongue out and catch a raindrop or a snowflake, at the very middle of it is some sort of impurity. Okay. If you don't have that readily available, then it's going to be on the grass, or it's going to be on the side of the house. It's going to be on that surface. And there have been many, many summers that have gone into drought, but there's been enough dew in the morning that these crops that you plant and that I plant, they're designed. Like, think about a corn plant, right? Look at those those leaves. They stick up like that on purpose to take that little bit of dew, dribble it right down, go straight to the stalk, and you get a little wet ball, a little wet area around the root ball every morning, and it can sustain a crop. It's an amazing, amazing thing. But I'll tell you this is kind of a fun bit of trivia. If I were to ask you, where's the driest place on earth? Okay. I won't ask you, but I'm going to tell you, if I were to ask you, where's the driest place on earth? Nearly everybody just goes back to like 5th grade geography and says, let me just remember a desert. The Sahara. They'll just say that. No way. Sahara's not the driest place on earth. The Sahara is hot, therefore has very low relative humidities, but the driest places on earth are the Arctic and Antarctic. And that's because it's so cold there, the water in the atmosphere can't be contained. So that's it. Driest places are on the poles.
How about that? We learned something.
I'm telling you,
I'm learning a lot.
Can you come on? Can we have him on once a week? I mean, this is great.
Yeah, that's correct.
Let's do it.
Yep.
Weather changes every day.
So, what about? Can you tell us about global warming? What do we need to know though about that?
Bobby, I mean, are we talking about chemtrails? And I mean,
Well, I mean, I want to include, I had that written down, but I also would like you to expound about not just, where you are with that, or what the data says or whatever, but then also if you look at the long-term trends, which I know you do more than we just watch day-to-day, month to month, where does that project also?
Yeah.
Because
these are good questions.
it is, whether it's global warming or not, we're having, just like for us, it greatly is affecting.
Well, the weather's changing. Yeah.
We're not getting, in the whole South is getting depressed over. We're just not getting the waterfowl because they're not coming far unless they're forced to. And, it just seems like it gets warmer and warmer and warmer. But then all of a sudden we get one really cold snap per winter, and then that's it. But anyway.
Yeah, he was just talking about it.
Yeah, talk about the trends on top of just like what your position is on global warming.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Climate change, isn't that the right word?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I mean, here's the thing. I hate both the words, climate change and global warming, because they've been so heavily politicized. I don't care if you're on the left or the right.
Yes.
We agree 100%.
The reality is that what you need to do is ask a good nerd, what's going on. So you brought one on your podcast today. So let me give you some ideas here. All right. The only reason I care about changes in the climate system is because it ultimately affects the people that I work for, right? I mean, we're extremely sensitive to all of this. So I want to know if something is changing systematically in a statistically significant way that's going to affect your business and mine. So I don't care about anything else. So here's the reality of it. Is man capable of changing Earth's climate? Oh, heck yeah. There's 8 billion of us. We are masterful at bending the Earth to our kind of will in the way that it works. And so you say, well, is it the fossil? No, it's not. If you start blaming an industry, you're off base, because what folks often, this drives me nuts, by the way, you'll have someone come out and say, oh, this is all because of big oil and fossil fuels. And I said, all right, well, can I tell you something? 200 years ago when we were industrializing, we needed a cheap, abundant, easily transportable fuel source. And guess what? We found it. We found it in coal, then we found it in oil, and we found it in natural gas. These are all hydrocarbons. We could use them to fuel industry. And by the way, the fueling of that industry has also dramatically reduced infant birth deaths. Our life expectancy has tripled. We have modern medicine, modern infrastructure. And honestly, I know that there's always people like, oh, this is the worst. It is not the worst time ever. You look at the human species, we are living in the best times ever. 100%. And it's because we were able to find a massive, abundant source of fuel. Now, when you burn a hydrocarbon, coal, oil, natural gas, guess what you get out of it? Hydro and carbon. And now listen to this. This is fascinating. You take Earth and look at its atmosphere. You all know that about 99% of it's oxygen and nitrogen, right? What's left over in the end is some carbon dioxide, some argon, water vapor. If you just took out the carbon dioxide and water vapor, just got rid of both of those gases and closed it up and made it 100% nitrogen and oxygen, Earth's global average temperature would go from 60 degrees Fahrenheit to 0, which means we have to have these trace gases, primarily CO2 and water vapor, to maintain Earth as a habitable planet. But you can now see that Earth's temperature is very sensitive to them. So long story short, when we put a little extra carbon in the atmosphere by burning fossil fuels, which, don't forget, has made all of our lives infinitely better, we've started to see that the Earth's atmosphere is responding to the redistribution of temperature, because basically those gases retain heat that would normally escape to space. Now, there's nothing political about that, because I don't care if you're the poorest person on the earth or the richest, or if you live in another country. We have all benefited from the fact that we use fossil fuels. And it just drives me nuts that everyone wants to point their finger and say, oh, you should stop eating beef because it's the cows that are farting. I'm like, you don't even understand how cows work. Do they put out methane? Yeah, but they don't fart it out. They burp it out. And by the way, don't forget, before you had all those cattle, there was 95 million head of buffalo in the middle part of this country. So it's not like we've, changed, how it all works. And so you have this massive misunderstanding. And as a result, people are acting on terrible information. And the reality is that there's a change in the system, and we are in a constant mode of adjustment, but that's what humans do. So what have I studied? I actually told you what the climate change looks like in Mississippi. I told you you're wetter. I told you get more of your rainfall events, bigger events like that. You're a bit warmer in winter, but turns out your summer max temperatures for the last 50 or so years, you're almost flat. It's like you're not getting hotter in the summer afternoon. But I guarantee if you flip on any news channel right now, they're going to tell you that the planet's exploding or it's about to burn up or nothing's happening at all. And that's wrong as well. So I get a little bit, annoyed by it. But I'll tell you this, and I'll stop after this.
No, I can listen. I love it. Honestly, I can listen to it all day. But I'm a weather nerd for sure.
The thing that bothers me the most about it is that whenever you guys asked it right, I loved it. Normally people come up to me and say, do you believe in global warming? And I'm like, I could believe in fairies. Do you care what I believe in? Your question should always be, is there evidence for something? Because if there's evidence, you can act on it. And that's what we try to present. And that's what most of us scientists attempt to do. Now, not all of us are good actors. There's some people out there doing some stupid stuff. Unfortunately, they all have a megaphone called social media as well. So the reality of it is, those of us that get down to the brass tacks of getting work done, we have to take these changes into consideration and understand how it's going to affect our business. And I'll just finish with this. There are places in the world that are seeing significant impacts from the shift in the climate system. But one of the more insulated places is the Mississippi Valley to the Canadian Shield. And that's a spot on the planet where, when you look at the relative changes compared to other places, we don't see quite the level of change that other places have around the world. So just something to think about.
Interesting.
It does seem like we don't get the cold weather in the last few years that we normally would expect.
Or if you get it, it's like
later,
for 3 days,
right.
and it is absolutely bone-chilling cold.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
And then it goes back. That's the variability we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a bigger point to what he just said for people to pay attention to in this age, because information is changed so much. He talked about what someone that's call him a bad actor or whatever can affect opinion now, unlike it used to. And of course, part of that is good and bad too. You know, our information was controlled by a few entities, and they kind of brainwashed everybody now. But bad actors can get out there. Just watch out for and ask yourself, is there an agenda? And when I get at that, is there political brings on agenda? An agenda, if it's not the truth, just ask yourself that. It could be on a variety of topics. This, what he talked about, is a great example of that. Is there agenda behind that? I mean, from the start of global warming talk, most of it had an agenda behind it, you know, and that's why I think I like the way we asked the question to him. What does the data show? What does science show? You know, and nobody knows the answer for sure, but they can do their best to give us, you know, an estimate of what's happening or what's going to happen, you know. But watch out for the agenda. That's on my point. In anything, in daily life, watch out for the agenda. Look for the truth.
Hey, Eric, do you know the difference between a horse and the weather?
Oh, my gosh. You brought the most scientific thing we've ever had. You got to bring the cornball into even this one, Bobby.
I want to hear. What's the difference?
Hey, Eric.
Well, okay, the difference in a horse and the weather, one is reined up and one rains down.
Wow.
Dad
free to
joke
use
to the
that
extreme. I'm going to write that one down.
I still don't think. Have you got your call from
I'm
Foxworthy
speaking- I'm
yet?
speaking
I don't think
Not yet.
Foxworthy's calling still.
Eric, have you got time for us to ask you a trivia question?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, Richie, we're going to turn it over. We ask a trivia to all of our guests. It's brought to you by the Peanut Patch. They're out of the Georgia, South Carolina.
yeah.
They make great boiled
I'm
peanuts.
sure you help them grow peanuts.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. These are great folks.
Great folks.
All right, our listener today who left a review, Hunter Moore 127, enjoy the podcast, grew up watching the TV show. So,
Hey, I told you somebody was watching.
Yeah,
Way to
yeah.
go, Richie.
So yeah, keep in mind, Outdoor Channel, going the TV show's there now. By the time this podcast gets out, so we'll be up and rolling.
All right.
So-
Tune in.
So and what does Hunter win?
Peanuts.
Yeah, some Peanut
Peanuts.
Patch peanuts. We'll get those shipped out to
Are we going to a variety, some original, some Cajun, and the new
That's right.
buffalo? They got a
Oh.
buffalo.
Yeah, we don't have any buffalo.
Yeah, we do.
Oh,
Yeah, we got buffalo.
How
are you
about that?
are you,
Maybe
hide,
we
are you
could-
hiding them there
No,
somewhere?
I wasn't hiding them. I was looking for some Cajun and ran across them because my kids. Yeah, I hope my kids win this. At
All
some
right, look,
point.
Eric's got to go.
My
Let's
bad.
keep going. All right, go, Rick.
Sorry.
All right.
I won't kidnap him.
While working as a lawyer in Illinois, Abraham Lincoln used as evidence what two-word manual to prove that a witness could not see a crime in the moonlight? He won the case.
Wow.
Abraham Lincoln.
What a question.
Back in the day,
What-
was a lawyer in Illinois, or is
What-
it Illinois?
It depends on where you're from.
Yes is silent.
So what?
Okay. What did you say again?
Yes.
What two-word manual did he use to prove that a witness cannot see a crime in the moonlight? We actually said someone said this word.
Yeah,
earlier.
so you could insert periodical insert where manual is.
And somebody said
It's a
it.
title.
Was he using the Farmer's Almanac?
Oh my gosh!
Oh, here it is. He's
He
killing
got
it.
right. Yeah.
He might not be right on the weather all the time, but he's right this
Oh, yeah.
time.
Is that like?
Got that trivia.
That's great.
That's all.
Hey, let me ask you a trivia question.
Uh-oh.
Okay, let's get. I wanna
We're-
get
hey,
dirty
now, hold
here. I
on
got a
now.
few.
Yeah, rut row.
Well, here we go. Everybody tune
All right, now,
together.
this is just kind of a fun one. Now, I understand where you all live versus where I live. You can have summer thunderstorm events where the rainfall is so much more intense than we sometimes get in the Midwest. I mean, it'll pour. But my question for you all, now, and you can give me a range. What do you think? Now, we measure raindrops, believe it or not. There's scientific researchers that want to measure the size and the density. We measure everything we can about raindrops. So what do you think the size is of the largest raindrop naturally falling from the sky, the largest raindrop that's ever been measured. I'm going to tell you, we've measured tens of billions of these things over the history of
This is a
atmospheric
great
sciences.
question.
Biggest one. What do you think?
right.
How big
Well,
was it?
yeah, is it
Diameter.
volume?
I wanna know the
Yeah,
diameter.
is it volume,
diameter.
weight, diameter?
Yeah.
Is it diameter?
Diameter.
Yeah,
I want to know the
diameter.
diameter from one side to the other.
So another question: is it falls? Does it not expand and contract, or is it consistent?
I'll answer that question after you give me your answer, but I'm going to tell you what was measured was a single droplet. So,
Geez, the way his hands are, I'm like, I've got to have to bump my answer up. He said a single droplet.
What are you
Oh,
saying?
don't let me do this. I'm just trying to show you a sphere.
A
so
volume.
assume that it fell as a sphere.
No, but diameter.
I'm gonna look at Toxie. He's the weather guy down here.
Man, this is crazy because he showed us
Yeah, you just
a
showed us
a hailstone as big as a warhead, dropped from a plane. You're holding up about 4 or 5 inches. I'm gonna say 3.5 inches.
No, don't let me do this.
I know.
Take that out of your head.
But I know it's got to be gigantic beyond my
I mean, I know
comprehension.
I've been hit by a 2-incher, I would think.
I don't know
think
that
so.
I've seen one that big myself, but
Yeah, Dudley.
I'm just gonna go the other way. I'm gonna say 14 inches.
Oh,
Good. Great. Somebody's getting wet.
Yeah, I'm at an inch.
I'm
I'm an inch.
All right. So we
you
got
ready?
a 3.5, a 2.5, yeah, 2,
14.
a 14.
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
And what were you, Bobby?
I'm an inch.
All
an
right.
inch.
So listen, as a raindrop falls, okay, the bigger it becomes, it ends up going from looking like a sphere to a hamburger. They squash. So this was part of what you brought up there a minute ago. When they do that, the bottom of them tends to grab air and they shred and they just explode. And that'll happen over as little as 10 or 15 feet as it falls.
right.
So the largest naturally occurring raindrop we've ever observed, we observed one in the Marshall Islands. We saw another one in Brazil. And you're going to say, how in the world did you do it? We have what are called probes. So basically, it's basically a small laser. Just imagine like this. And it's actually got it's got a laser and a receptacle that just basically fires across open space. And we put these on airplanes and fly them through storms. We also have them ground measurements. So when the raindrop falls in between, it'll temporarily cut off that laser and we can measure its width. So I'm telling you, we've been flying these things for decades as atmospheric scientists studying precipitation processes. And the biggest one we've ever measured was 9 millimeters.
Ha.
That's it. No bigger than, not even a full centimeter, the biggest one ever. And that's because anything bigger than this will it'll bag and shred and just explode into lots of little droplets.
Yeah, I guess.
Look at him
like
down
an
there.
idiot.
Look at him smirking
Bobby.
down there.
He's just taking the just taking the over under.
He'll blind
but you made it like, is there not a difference between the largest possible, sea level versus 14,000 feet or whatever?
So we've tested it. So what we do, and there's a big one out at Colorado State University. I think they still have it there, but we have built what are called cloud chambers. Think of it as just like a tube. Some of them are 3 or 4 feet wide. Some of them are 20 feet wide, and some of them go up, hundreds of feet. And we'll try to generate different size droplets, and then we film them as they fall. We've never been able, even under very careful control, we've never been able to keep a droplet larger than about 9 millimeters. It will just bag and shatter and make lots and lots of little tiny droplets out of it. So it's very physically difficult. So here's another thing for you. In the naturally occurring world, raindrops never look like teardrops. They can't have a physical top point on them. So that's just something we draw as humans because of the way tears go down our cheeks. In the real world, they're either spheres or hamburgers.
Huh.
Why does it?
We need to take some slow motion video.
Yeah.
When there's sometimes it's raining and the sun is shining. What's going on there?
Well, especially in the evening, you can see this, right? So the sun's basically getting underneath the cloud as it starts to set, and you get some really awesome rainbows out of that.
Yeah, but it's raining. It's raining when there's no clouds overhead. It's that's happened in the last couple of days.
Oh, yeah. So what happens is you can actually have a storm, especially in summer, that pops up, goes through its entire precipitation process, exhausts all of its cloud water into rainwater, and the rain shaft falls, the cloud is completely gone. It's evaporated and dead.
How about
So you're
that?
just getting the leftover rain that fell out of it as it's gone off, and the rain shaft still sitting there. Those are actually pretty amazing to see. Yep, that happens all the time, especially where you are.
Yep, and that'll get you a rainbow every time too. Just
Every time.
Well, when we get you back on, which
Yeah.
I hope we
need this
within
once a
a year,
month.
I've got
once a week.
I want to
Yeah,
ask
man.
a lot about thermals and,
Yep.
and, hunt,
Sure.
and deer hunting and thermals.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Eric,
that and cold fronts that'll flush those deer around. And shoot, we need to talk about fishing calendars.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and you did mention Jet Contrail. We need to talk about chemtrail conspiracy too.
I
someday.
love this. Can we please get him back on?
Oh yeah. Like, no.
Uh,
we're gonna have much discussion about this topic when he's
so
Yeah.
moved on because
Eric, quick.
it deserves more attention.
It certainly does.
Yes.
We will do this again. But so how can guys? Is there a website or how do they sign up to get your email?
Yeah, so easiest thing to do is just go to Nutrient Ag Solutions. Sorry, I got another farmer calling me there. Go to nutrientagsolutions.com/weather. You can get signed up for the newsletter. It's real simple. That's an easy place to get. I put out once a week on Monday. It just covers big topics. But in that report, you also get access to my website. It's real simple. It's just ag-wx.com. We abbreviate weather as WX. That's a throwback to Morse code. So back in the day when we had to communicate quick, WX just meant weather. So ag-wx.com, that's the website I build for Nutrients. Got all my weather stuff on there. You know, it's built for nerds, but you can go there and check some stuff out and whatnot. And we're constantly evolving the site to make for better weather information. Yeah, good place to go. I'm also on YouTube. I do a video 5 days a week in the morning where we just dig deep into topics. And if you just get on YouTube and look up Nutrient Ag Solutions, you'll find it real easy.
Cool.
Well, we are all nerds, so
Yes.
Big time.
this will be good for us and all our listeners.
That's right. Good
Perfect.
stuff.
For sure.
I'm ready to do it again.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
My
Eric,
wheels are spinning. I'm
Yeah.
dizzy.
I got a lot more questions.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Eric, thank you for being here. We know you
Yeah.
went long with us, and we appreciate it so
that,
much.
yeah.
You're a busy guy, and we appreciate a little time.
Here, get your seatbelt on because you're going to be back if you'll have us.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. This has been a lot of fun.
Good
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
I got questions for you next time, though, because I am not as good a fisherman as I want to be. So we
Okay.
Hey,
we
we
need
can
to
hook it
trade a
up.
little bit here.
Okay, Bobby.
Yeah, we will try to help you with that for sure.
All right.
Eric Snodgrass, he is the principal atmospheric scientist and the weather wizard of Nutrien.
All right.
How about that? What a title!
Yeah. That's
And
a
he's
great one.
he's a soccer coach. He coaches his daughter's scientific Olympiad team.
Oh, yeah.
Retired storm chaser. Are you still chasing the storms?
You know, I got in trouble when my daughter was 6 months old. I took her on a chase in my
Uh-oh.
wife's Toyota Sienna minivan. And she calls me and she goes, "Where are you? And did you pick my daughter's name is Amelia. My wife says, "Where are you? And where's Amelia?" I'm like, "We're in Decatur." She says, "Why are you in Decatur?" I'm like, "There's a really sweet storm." She goes, "You are not taking that kid storm chasing at 6 months." So I backed off a little bit as we started to have kids. And it's a young man's hobby, that's for sure.
Yeah, I bet she fell asleep though.
Oh, she did. She didn't. It was passed out the whole time. I was having a good time, though.
Have you ever seen a really good funnel cloud?
Oh yeah, lots of tornadoes. It's amazing. You know, the thing I worry about with it though is when you get exposed to so much severe weather, you do become a little bit desensitized to it.
Yeah.
It loses some of its scariness, which can be bad. Your fight or flight goes away, and you
Yeah.
need that. You need that to make sure you
it's
stay
like
safe.
It's like flying. They say there's old pilots and bow pilots, but there's no old bow pilots. and it's like legendary Mr. Jim Thigpen would say, "What's the top prerequisite of being a great pilot?" He said, "Being a complete and total chicken of the weather."
Yeah.
But it's in the same, you're saying the same thing. You
Yeah.
should never lose that fear of the weather.
I'd get you down here.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Eric, we're going to let you go. Thank you so much for being
Yeah.
here. We
Have a great
appreciate it.
day. Appreciate you.
Take care, guys. Thanks.
sir.
That was a
Thank
good
you
one.
so
That's
much.
good stuff.
Guys, that was fun.
I know. I've got more
No words.
questions for him than I do the whitetail guys.
Well, we always say, what did we learn? And I there was a bunch. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just real impressed. And I knew we
Oh
would
my
be.
gosh.
Yeah, what a
I
great
was beyond
resource.
impressed. I mean, I was excited given the topic, given that I know how smart the nutrient people are. It had to be, and you know, let's face it, ag. What an important thing to add to your arsenal to equip the farming community.
Yeah, and talk about a guy.
But I
that-
knew it would be good, but I had no idea it would be that good.
And talk about a guy that loves what he does.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness. He was
It just oozes out of him. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yep.
Yeah, so as I was trying to set that up, he and I went through multiple. His day is so planned out.
I'm sure.
It was hard to get him.
Especially now the growing season.
We'll just say once a month. We do. That's our Jim Cantori.
Once a month.
Yeah.
I bet it's worse
We
than
could
ever
get a
now
little
because
report from him.
Yeah. I mean, why
even
not?
around
The
here,
Nutrient Ag
people are
Weather Report.
struggling to even try to plant what they could.
Yeah.
They're still just bare dirt all over the place.
Sunny's corn is about the only good looking stuff around here. It isn't good looking. It looks
I've
better
seen
than
it now.
everything.
Some of it's rebounded more. Now, somehow, Randy Simmons got some beans in. Must have been a couple weeks ago. We must have had, and that's the one thing we didn't talk. But it seems like the summer weather, it keeps going over the same place. And I don't know if that's just by there's moisture to pick up there, so it does more. But
it is interesting.
Doug was talking about. He looked up Starville, and it was 10 inches more than you've actually recorded. Mm-hmm. That's 10 miles away.
Yeah, we're going to need to invent a tractor that like floats, like a hydrofoil or something in the future.
LGP. LGP.
What does that mean?
Yeah,
Low ground pressure.
yeah.
There we go. Okay.
That's the wide track, long track stuff.
All right, guys.
Mr. Know-It-All.
Yeah, we
right.
I
Oh, we're
think-
still recording. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Oh, we
look,
got all that.
guys, Rich, you hit it on the Outdoor Channel. The show, the Gamekeepers of Mossy Oaks on the
Yeah.
Outdoor Channel.
Yeah, check it out.
Tuesday nights, I think.
Starting off with talking turkeys, right?
Starting off with Clover.
My bad.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Second
Clover's
episode,
turkey,
second
same
episode's
thing.
turkey.
Mark that time code. Yeah.
My favorite plant.
Turkeys will be number 2. I loved how he said that dew was like a
A
Mother
kiss
Nature's
from,
kiss.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of references.
Sure. It
I
makes me-
loved a lot of things he
He
said.
did.
I did
I
too.
know you would. I'm glad you were here. That one had your name written all over it, Toxie.
All right.
Man, I could have sat there literally. I could have sat there and listened to him all day.
I just kept on more and more questions as he talked. I just more and more.
I did too.
more.
I do. I've got a whole list over here. All right, guys.
All right.
This has been fun. Richie, have you got anything?
Just letting you know, hey, I know we've been getting a lot of rain down here in the south, but deer season starts now.
Hey.
So check out, we got protein peas, we got a sale going on. So
Yeah,
got
yeah,
all
we do.
kinds of-
Use coupon code DEER25 or a GK Pod and save a little money.
Great point.
yeah.
Now, and that's one thing you can't. Maybe there's a little too much moisture, but you can't grow it without the moisture. So
That's right.
where you can plan your time, if you get a little window to plant,
This might be
take
the-
off to do
yeah.
it. Yeah.
This could be the year for those brassica plots in the south to really boom with those early rains. Maybe.
And it's, we got poor man's no-till still out there.
Yeah,
You can
that's
always
right.
fling something on the surface.
Oh,
and
this would be a perfect year
clip it.
for it. If there's ever been a good year for that, this would be it.
we usually, when I was growing up, we always waited till early July to plant our peas for bow season.
Yep.
So it is not too late.
No, not at all.
That's good to know. All right, guys. I'm looking around. It looks like, why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley.
Get us out of here, Richie.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast, and be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.